Hey everybody, I don't know how much time I'm going to have to get anything done here in the fish room today, but I have been asked for an around the world update, so that's what we're going to do today. A very impromptu video. I just walked in the door and I'm going to bang this out before I do anything else. That way I know I've got a video done for today. So we're going to see things as is, and that's okay. A lot of times when I'm shooting video, I will get my tanks all sort of prepped and looking good, getting ready to go around and look at them all. But other times I like to show everybody pretty much exactly what's going on in the fish room the moment it's going on. And between the snow and a sick cat that I had that was slowly dying last week, I finally wound up taking him down to the vet because apparently nature was not going to take its course. Haven't got a whole lot done down here in the fish room, so you can see the tanks are going to be a little rough looking today, but again, it's an as-is video, and that's part of what you get sometimes. So with my waterfall tank here, I'm both happy with it, and at the same time I feel like it's time to start doing something with it again. I'm happy with it in the sense that it's really starting to look natural, and by natural I mean it's got algae and scum and green stuff and orange stuff and yellow stuff growing everywhere. I did just notice I've got an adventurous mountain climbing snail working his way up the side there. The plants are starting to look a little rough. I'm hoping maybe some of this creeping jenny recovers. That bird's nest fern you can see, this one right here, is still looking okay, but it's probably about time to get transplanted. It's still in the little disposable planter I got it from at the nursery, so it really probably ought to come out of that and get put into something a little more substantial, possibly even planted directly in there. That's an option. We'll see how that goes. My daylily is kind of interesting because this is clearly last year's growth and it's dying back, but if you look, it's kind of pale and a little peaked, but I got all this new growth sprouting out on my daylily. So we might get a second round and we might get some more flowers coming off of it. Who knows? I looked at Walmart today. The only bulbs they had were some bulbs left over from last year on clearance. I did buy a bunch of them, but unfortunately they were all daffodils, so none of them could really work in here. I'm trying to figure out a way I can incorporate them, but it's probably going to be something simple like just putting some daffodil bulbs in a planter and then having some flowers come off to the side or something like that. But it'll be an early harbinger of spring and it'll look nice, so maybe we'll be doing that. As far as the tank itself goes, nothing really new there. Everything's just kind of ticking over the way it always does. We'll get this light turned on. My Ludwigia here is doing really well. That stuff's growing in nice and lush. You can see I got it growing in the back there. So I'm happy with that. It's nice and green, but it's also got those tinges of red in there, which I like to see. And then of course all of the Java and everything in there is doing well. Once again, my old friend, the cyanobacteria is growing on stuff, but that's pretty much always the case in this tank. I'm not going to worry too much about it until it gets to be a little more covering of everything. When I get in here to do a water change next time, I'll wipe these leaves down and I'll physically remove a bunch of it. I'll get some of this green stuff off of the rocks and the woodwork over here, and as long as I stay on top of it, it'll be fine. We don't have to worry about treating this tank at the moment. We'll just get in there and mechanically clean it a little bit. But other than that, everything is still just sort of ticking over the way it always does. Again, in need of a water change, but only because it's been a little while. I don't have anything in the way of nitrates or anything in this tank, so not to worry there. My foot tank, nothing really to ever talk about in this tank. It's still just ticking over like a clock. I don't ever really do anything to that except sprinkle some fish food in it every night, so we'll just move on. So let's get these lights turned out so as not to glare out the rest of the videos. Work our way around my tripod that I still got setting up from the other day. A 29 Miscellaneous here. Let me actually turn that one last light off too. My 29 Miscellaneous is looking a little unusual ever since I lost my angelfish in this tank. It just kind of looks empty now. The skirt tetras that are in here, and there are still 5 of them, they tend to hide. And I've also got this stuff growing on the glass here. I'm not really sure what the deal with that is. I've never had that before, but now I've suddenly got quite a lot of it. And I've also noticed my Java fern has kind of taken off and is growing a little more vigorously than it used to. So this is one of those tanks that just sat there and ticked over like a clock forever and ever. And now that we've lost one of the big main fish in the tank, I don't know exactly what's going on in here. I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'm sure, in the future, but whenever you change anything in a tank, it could be something as simple as removing a fish or taking a few plants out. The tank always undergoes changes, and I don't know, it's just going to have to play out. We'll have to see what happens with this tank. I'm not expecting it to turn into any kind of, catastrophe or get the tank all overgrown with stuff or whatever, but I do want to get another fish put back in this tank. I'm actually considering pulling the angelfish out of my New World tank. That's a nice, small, compact angelfish that would look very nice in this tank. I've also got a couple others that I could choose from. But in the meantime, we are going to start looking at my 55-gallon gourami tank. Speaking of angelfish, the only thing new in this tank is that I did add that big angelfish. This was the one that used to be upstairs in my wife's tank, which was a 20 standard. And I'll say again that I don't think that a 20-gallon tank is necessarily too small for any angelfish. It just depends on the specific angelfish. And this particular one not only developed a very large body for an angelfish, the fins are just huge on it. Let's see if I can get my hand up there without it getting scared away. I mean, he's right up against the glass, so that gives you an idea. That is a big lot of angelfish right there. So that was crammed into a 20-gallon tank. And while it didn't suffer any damage on its fins or anything like that, it's just got more room to swim around and look good in this tank. It just looks fantastic in here. I'm really happy with the move. And I'm also happy to say that my wife has come down and checked a few times, and she agrees that it looks so much better in this tank than it did in the one that we had it upstairs. So she's happy with the move as well. But other than that, nothing really going on in the tank. I shot some feeding video last week and cleaned the glass, did a water change and that sort of thing, but nothing really to speak of. Again, a lot of that's going to be happening in this video. Again, I've had a kind of hectic week that did not involve being down here in the fish room. So my 55-gallon tank here, I'm kind of debating what I want to do with this tank, and I think I might just shoot a video specifically talking about maybe throwing some ideas out there, some options, get people's opinions on what you think I should do, the direction I need to go in. I do definitely need to treat this tank for the cyanobacteria. You can see that green is growing all over everything. I'm leaving it alone deliberately. I'm doing that on purpose because one of these days I'm going to get around to shooting video about cleaning it up. And so that's going to be video subject at some point, and that's why I'm leaving it there. It's not hurting the tank. The water's fine, the fish are fine. In fact, I've been noticing today that the diamond tetras there, you can see, are spawning again. So I'm kind of hoping if I leave things well enough alone, they might be getting into this dense vegetation down here and depositing their eggs, and I might get some more fry out of it. So again, the water's fine. It just looks unsightly. It just looks unpleasant, It's that green stuff growing all over everything. But the fish are fine. They're not in any danger. And I don't really need to get in there and do a water change for those kinds of reasons. I just need to do it to make the tank look nicer. Can't tell. I think that's just an old leaf in the background back there. But I have noticed that my catfish has taken to, I've got a South American bumblebee catfish in this tank, and it has taken to hiding in the dense vegetation rather than trying to find an unoccupied cave down there in the bottom. And a lot of times I can find it during the day. It'll be, well, it won't be out because it'll be hiding in the leaves, but it'll be in the leaves. Is that it? Nope, that's another dead leaf. See, I really need to get in here and get this tank cleaned out. And that's one of the things I'm considering doing, is getting in here and really chopping this Anubias way back. And maybe putting some other plants in there, maybe even adding some rocks or some wood or scaping it out a little bit different. I don't know. I just feel like I'm ready for a change in this tank. It's looked like this for so long. It's just got two giant Anubias that are growing together in the middle. And from time to time, I got to get in there and cut chunks of it out because, well, it grows up and out of the tank. So we'll be doing something here soon. Make sure you subscribe. You won't miss any of that whenever I get around to it. This is my other tank that I'm going to get around to doing something with one day. This is my 40-gallon tank. I've just kind of put this tank on mental hold. You can actually even see how low the water line is down here from the top. That's how long it's been since I've even topped the tank off, let alone done a water change. Not many fish left in here. I've got a few rubber lip plecos. I think I've got one Raspora het. I've got one glow light tetra. Somewhere in there is my single rainbow fish, and then I've got some Siamese algae eaters, and they come out when it's feeding time. Otherwise they just kind of stay hidden. The tank's riddled with cyanobacteria. Look, there's that little glow light tetra you can see down there, but you can also see the cyanobacteria in this tank is just growing over everything. And I've talked about it before. I'm not going to go into a big spiel about it again now. It's just I'll get to this tank whenever I get to it. I'm kind of frustrated with this tank for a variety of reasons, and so we're not going to talk much more about that one. Moving on to my 125-gallon tank. That is the angelfish that was in question. I might move that one back over to my 29. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Nothing going on in this tank specifically. The only thing I can say is that I did pilfer some of the water sprite out of there. I ripped this big body of it in half and took a big root mass out of it and put it into my native tank, where I've got my crayfish and stuff, and we'll be seeing that in just a moment. But otherwise, nothing really going on in this tank other than ticking over like a clock. I'm down to 4 of these Notropis species. I don't know exactly what species they are. I just call them Notropis species. If you actually look up the Notropis, there's a lot of different species that could be in my area. And the one that these most closely resemble are the black-nosed dace. I don't think they actually are the black-nosed dace, though, and if they're not the black-nosed dace, then I don't know what they are. I have no idea what type of Notropis species they are, and I say that because they look so similar that you literally have to get in there and count the number of rays in their fins, or you have to count the number of scales between this fin and that fin, or the number of scales they have behind their eyeball, and weird little stuff like that is how you would start positively identifying some of these species that look so similar, and that's why I just don't worry about it. It doesn't matter to me. They're minnows as far as I'm concerned. I didn't know that they were called anything other than minnows until a few years ago when I started keeping them. And in fact, I didn't even know there were different types of minnows. These larger ones, these creek chubs, when they're younger, at a glance, they look very much like these fish. And I had no idea that there were multiple species of these little sort of brown stripy fish in my local streams. So I've had a bit of an education about that. These larger fish, I get asked about them a lot. These are actually golden shiners. I bought them several years ago from the bait and tackle shop. Actually, I bought this one several years ago. I bought this one a couple years ago. Jumbo shiners, I bought them. I think when I bought them at the jumbo size, they were 75 cents a piece, and they were, yay big. And when I bought this one a couple years ago, all they had was large shiners, which were 50 cents a piece, and he was about that big maybe. And of course, they were sold as bait, but I brought them home, put them in the fish tank, and they look great. And they are a species that could be around here. I've never personally seen them or caught them, but they are native to around this part of the world, so I don't really feel like it's out of place having them in a tank with other North American fish, especially. They certainly could be even in my native tank. And then, of course, I've got the South American stuff with the silver dollars, and I've got the angelfish, and I've got a pleco in there. This one here is a white suckerfish that is also caught locally in my stream, and they get very big. They get over a foot, and they get that big around. At least I see them out of George's Creek all the time lying on the bottom, and they get big. The only fish that is not a New World fish in this tank is my spotted tilapia, who I've named Flo. She comes from Florida, but that's only because they are considered an invasive species in Florida, and they're all riddled through the canals and everything, and that's where she was caught before I got her. One of my viewers gave her to me. But they are actually from West Africa. So it is a West African fish in my New World tank. So I do have one Old World fish in my New World tank. But other than that, that's all good. And if you're wondering what that glare is, that's my other tripod that I've still got set up from the other day. So moving on to my, well, let's first start at my snail tank here. Let me turn that fan off. Not long ago, I showed you how I had a huge mass of Java growing in there. You can see I yanked all that out. I should have mentioned I put all of it in my waterfall tank in various places, and I'm hoping it starts growing like crazy in my waterfall tank, so let's hope for that. Cross your fingers. But you can see it's already starting to recover and grow back. It's even growing up there a little bit and starting to recover and come back. So it won't be too long before I got loads of Java moss again. That stuff you just can't get rid of once you get it. My native tank, this is the one that I put the water sprite in that I pilfered from my New World tank that we were just looking at. It's doing well. You can see this is all new growth there. I got a little nub starting right here coming out. Everything out here still looks nice and green and healthy. You can see I'm still getting new growth unfurling on the ends. You can even see it starting to grow and turn back up towards the light. So I'm happy about that. Definitely need to get in there and change the filter. You can see I'm down to just a little trickle of water again. That should be splashing water. That's in fact what that black piece of foam board back there is. That's like a backsplash. That catches all the splashing water that is supposed to be coming from that very vigorous fountain right there. But the filter is very, very clogged up at the moment. Fish-wise, I think at this point I've lost all of the really cool little bottom dwellers, the little darters that were in there, and the sculpins. I have not seen them in days. I'm kind of bummed out about that. Everything was looking good. They were doing well enough. You know, they were feeding, they were active, I was seeing them, and so that encouraged me to go out and buy a few, well, not buy, collect a few more. And when I did, I caught them, I brought them home, I put them in the tank, and then they all died. So again, every time I've got, you know, you tinker with the tank at all and suddenly it just throws it all out of whack and weird stuff happens. So I don't know what happened to cause all those fish to die, but even the sculpin that I had that was in there that was looking good has now died. And I know right now the tank looks empty. You might notice the odd fish dart or dash here and there. But there's a lot of fish in this tank, believe it or not. They're all just down under the rocks hiding. I've got at least 15 to 18 of the gambusia or the mosquito fish. I've got several various species of the Notropus in there, the little black striped minnows. I've got at least 2 different species of those. And I've still got at least 2, but possibly 3 crayfish going on in the tank right now. So there's still plenty of animals in there. They're just not really active or out and about. We'll see. We'll see what happens with this tank. We're not too far off from springtime. I know we probably really are in reality, but I got to keep telling myself that so I can hang on. Oh, excuse me. So we're not too far off from springtime, so maybe we will be able to do something about getting some different fish in this tank. I'm even open to the idea of maybe putting a small sunfish in there and watching it grow for the summer. My goal someday, I really, really, really want a yellow perch. And if I caught a very small yellow perch, I would bring it home and put it in this tank. It wouldn't be long before it was the only fish left in the tank, but that would be okay with me because I would have a yellow perch. And when it got big enough, it would go over into my 125 New World tank. And yeah, it would just be awesome. I'm really looking forward to getting a yellow perch one of these days. Moving on to my 125. If we start at this end and just kind of look down, all you see is lush, overgrown vegetation. I really, really need to get in this tank. This is probably going to be the next project I get to, honestly. I got to work on getting some of the scummy stuff like this, the mats. You know, that's cyanobacteria growing in a mat floating on the surface. And, you know, so I need to get in there and work on cleaning stuff like that up. You just saw, let me go throw this over here. You just saw how my tiger lotus is floating at the surface. I've got all this Java fern that's so thick it really blocks the flow of water. And of course I've got the hair algae and stuff growing in there, which isn't that big of a deal, but it is noticeable. If you look, you see on the edge of that Java right there, you can see all that hair algae growing on that. That eventually will get big enough and long enough that it'll become problematic. In fact, I'm even getting clumps breaking loose and floating at the surface, which I noticed the other day. This is partially the hair algae and it is partially cyanobacteria that's actually just coming to the surface and floating. So we will have to get in there and start working on that. Now that I got my hands full again, let me throw this over here. And I do have a mat on the floor that I'm throwing that on. I'm not just throwing it on the carpet. So that'll probably, honestly, even though I've already pointed out I really need to do some work on my 40 breeder, this is honestly the tank that I probably will sit down and shoot some video of getting some work done. I'll do a big water change. We'll get in there and clear a lot of those plants out, do a filter change, so on and so forth, and we'll see what we come up with that. My 20-gallon angelfish tank. See, here's another perfect example of a 20-gallon tank that has an angelfish in it that fits in there just fine. This particular angelfish is just not a particularly large angelfish, and it has no problem at all being in a 20-gallon tank. So if you're wondering about all the suds, that is because I did indeed put another dose of ChemiClean in this tank this morning. Was not intended to shoot this video today, but now that we are, you can see that it's still reacting. I'm still getting a lot of foam coming up. It's been about a week and a half since I did the last treatment on it. For those of you who haven't been following along, I've been really slamming this tank with the ChemiClean treatment. I don't know what it is with this tank in particular, but I just had cyanobacteria that would not go away, and every time it came back with a vengeance. And so I decided, partially as an experiment, we were going to slam this tank with ChemiClean treatments and see if we can't get that stuff out of there once and for good. And so today I think we're done. I really do think it's out of there. If you look closely, you can see how brown and dead everything that's on the plants looks. You can see how dead everything on the glass looks. So I really kind of think we're finally there, but I thought for good measure we're going to do at least one more. I might even do one more little dose after this, but we'll give it another day or two, and then we will get in, do a water change. Once I've done a water change, I will either be able to put more in or take the air stone out. We'll call it good. But we're coming around the bend any day now. I'm going to be calling this little project, experiment, whatever you want to call it. We're going to be calling that good, and we'll have a final discussion about it and so on and so forth. I did lose another guppy out of this tank, but that's not unexpected. In fact, it's one of the last few remaining of that type of guppy I got several years ago, and guppies don't last long. The fact that it's been in there for several years is testament to the fact that I'm not too worried about the ChemiClean being responsible for that. But again, we'll talk about all that and do a big wrap-up video when we're done with the treatment on that one. So moving on to my 40-gallon brackish tank, or Butterbeans tank, whatever you want to call it. Again, nothing really to talk about in here. I've been feeding Butterbean a lot more snails lately, which is why you can see so many snail shells down there. He tends to be less interested in his krill as of late. I'm not really sure why. If you look around, you'll notice some of this stuff is actually uneaten krill that just got waterlogged and sank, and he never got around to, eating it. So not really sure why he wasn't interested in the krill, but when I put the snails in there, he really goes after the snails. You can also see all the uneaten fish food, all this sort of pinkish looking colored stuff, especially that very pink, obviously fish food looking stuff. That is me very clearly way overfeeding this tank. I've got these little guppies that are swimming around in there. There's about 8 of them, maybe 9 of them. I don't even know. But they're little tiny guppies. They're either Endlers or they're Endlers guppies hybrids, but they're not big fish. And I've obviously been putting too much food in there. So need to get on top of this tank, get it cleaned up a little bit, get all those snail shells out of there. And I need to start sort of adjusting the way I feed this tank because I'm clearly overfeeding it. Again, my tripod. We are actually going to end up, we normally will end up back at my 29, but today we're going to end up here at my waterfall tank because I want to point out what I forgot to when we started, and that is that up in here, all in this area, plus I threw a clump of it in there, I threw a clump up here. Well, the clump in here is actually a clump I threw up there, but it came down the wash and ended up over here. And I threw another piece up here, and this is the Java moss we're talking about. I tucked some Java moss behind the daylily here. I threw a piece of Java moss here, and then I took some clumps of Java moss and stuffed them back in various little nooks and crannies back in there. And so hopefully in a month or two we will actually be able to see some really green, you know, lush, bushy. Again, I don't care if there's lots of variety and stuff, you know, as long as I can see some really lush green stuff growing out of there, I think it'll look great. And in fact, that looks pretty good already. It's definitely showing signs of new growth. So that's exciting. I got some more of it right in here that looks like it's doing well. All right. All right, everybody, there you go. Again, I don't know if I'm going to have time to get anything actually done today here in the fish room, but if you're subscribed, you won't miss any of it because I always try to get just about everything I do around here on video. So thanks for watching this one. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you're subscribed, and I will see you real soon on the next one. Don't forget, this one here is my waterfall tank.